Good morning. Good morning. It's not even morning. It's afternoon. It's literally just ticked over to the afternoon. Hello, it's Neil Long, and you are live. We are live. We're all live. We're all alive, which is a good start. And this is Men's Radio Station for a Wednesday. Russ is away, but we're still going live, of course. And I'm going to sit here and chat to you about all things mental health. Got a great guest talking about neurodivergence coming later. So let's see who we've got on the show. Your comments, please. I'm not seeing any comments come in yet. It's kind of weird. I feel I'm sitting here just literally talking to myself. I feel like I'm broadcasting over lockdown again. Is anybody out there? Hope you're okay. It's quite windy here in southwest London, in case you're wondering where I am. Where are you? Let us know where you are. Say hi. We can do your shout outs, your requests, your dedications. Well, I don't play records. Who have we got tuned in? Let's have a quick look. Have a quick look. Stick a comment on so I know where you are and I can say hello to you. Let's get interactive. Yep, the numbers are starting to build, which is lovely. That's what we like to see. So stick a comment in and I can say hello. We can get to know who is on the timeline. Barry J. Allen, morning all. How are you? Good to have you tuned in. Barry J. Allen. Who else have we got? Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Don't be shy. So, in case you missed the very beginning, 1,000-word letter of apology, please, on my desk. Wanting to know why. But we are talking about neurodivergence later on. I thought I might do a little bit more on NLP, neuro-linguistic programming today, because we're having some interesting comments on that. Linda Dave says, hello. In fact, the most common bit of feedback we've been getting on the NLP is it's quite hard to understand. But that's understandable when you think about it, because the concepts we're looking at, even though they're relatively simple, certainly on an intellectual level, and remember, there's a difference between understanding something intellectually and really, vicariously, that real vicarious feeling of, yeah, I've got this, I'm living this, I'm being this is wired into me. And most of us haven't been taught this stuff. So at no point, if you don't understand it or find it a bit hard to integrate, or perhaps like me, my most likely response is, yeah, I understand it intellectually, but actually really feeling it in my body tangibly, it's going to take a little bit more being it rather than understanding it, I guess you could put. Don't feel bad. It takes a while and it takes a little practice, but once it's mastered, you've got this whole new kind of skill set for life, and it's powerful stuff, and it does work. Graham Pack, hello to you. Greetings from a sunny and tropical Bushy. Sunny and tropical Bushy. Oh, to be in Bushy on a fine Wednesday afternoon. Hello, Graham. Good to have you tuned in. Some of you, and this is also understandable, said that's just psychobabble. There are people that like to read books and quote highfalutin things just as they can feel sort of intellectually superior to you. This is not psychobabble. My job is to put it in, particularly doing a job like this, radio, my job is to put it in a context which is most easily understandable. And there's no test here. I'm not trying to say, oh, you're doing better than you and I'm better than you because I understand and you don't. Not at all. If anything, you'll kind of learn together. When I've been in seminars doing neuro-linguistic programming, you find the level of knowledge in the room when pooled is incredible. And you suddenly start to see people in a bit of a different way. You think, God, I think sometimes we've got quite a two-dimensional view of people, and doing any kind of personal growth work, I suppose, you think, there's more to people. Perhaps more importantly, there's more to me. What parts of me have I not explored? What more potential have I got? Questions like that, which is pretty good stuff, really. Pretty good. So keep the comments coming in. I would love to give you a shout out on the show today. That's me, Neil Long. Hello. But you probably knew that. Phil Dave is going to be here on Friday and Russ is going to be back next week. Brilliant guest earlier in the week. Brilliant guest presenter as well. Thanks again to Emily Kate Owen. We'll get her back on the show again soon. Our guest was Helen Snape of helensnape.com. And if you'd like details of where to buy her book, Drop the Fake Smile, which is all about stopping being a people pleaser. We're all a little bit guilty of that, aren't we, over the years? tinyurl.com/drop the fake smile if you're interested. tinyurl.com, drop the fake smile. Okay, so I've had a text from the chap that's joining me at 12:30, so I'm just going to text him back, tell him where he can listen. I'll send him a voice message. Hello, buddy. If you just go to MRS, Men's Radio Station, you can find it on Facebook, all the good platforms, actually. Probably Facebook or YouTube. You can find it on there as well, or just Google and go to the Listen Live. There we go. Broadcasting to simultaneously to two groups of people at once. Love it, love it. Right, who else have we got on? Any comments? Don't be shy. You're normally quite verbose at this point. I've heard from Barry and Linda and Graham. Come on now. Put yourself on the timeline and let me know who you are. State your business or forever hold your peace. Or are you going to be a lurker? I heard a great word the other day. I love this. My friend makes T-shirts, and I want to suggest this to him because it's a brilliant thing. I put it out to my listenership on the other radio. There's no need to say the other radio station. You know I work for Radio Jackie, on Radio Jackie, and it's coined words. And we had one the other day, agnorant, which is basically people who are arrogant and ignorant at the same time. And kind of the more arrogant they get, the more their ignorance shows, agnorant. But the best one, and it was absolutely genius, it was a binfluencer, which is putting your bins out and all the neighbours copy you. You're the binfluencer of the road. I did come up with some more. A binterference, which is swapping the neighbours' bins over so they don't get their rubbish collected, and bin dependent, which is not being influenced by neighbours and, you know, you doing you and doing your own thing, soul sister, soul brother. Asa Don Brown, good day from New York. Asa Don Brown, hello to you. Right, should we do some NLP then? Some neuro-linguistic programming. Okay. Do ask any questions. Type the questions in the chat, and I'll do a little Q&A with questions at the end. Hey, says Elizabeth Green. And Graham Pack is king of the bad jokes. Been there, done that. But you haven't really been there and done that, have you, Graham? See, I can do crap jokes too. I'm allowed to. They're good for torturing your children with dad jokes, aren't they? One of life's little pleasures. Anyway, so back to the neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. I'm going to just summarize. It's got some principles. Now, you don't have to even know these principles to receive NLP. And in fact, if there's anyone that would like to give up chocolate or something they want to give up or something they'd be thinking about wanting to change, stick it in the comments. And if it's something I can do live now with you, because it's pretty good stuff, we can do it. We can do it online. Time and space make no difference, man. I've helped people give up chocolate before. I've helped people with their phobias before. Help people with all sorts of stuff before, and it can be very, very fast working. So if anyone would like to be not a guinea pig, a client, if you like, and you don't mind doing it in public live, obviously I will need your permission to do that. Then we do it. And perhaps you'd like to give up chocolate or eat more of something or less of something or whatever. Pop it in the chat, and I'll demonstrate it, because you don't need to know the principles to receive it. You only need to know the principles if you practice it. But I think it's good to do the principles just to give you a bit of an idea about what it is. And as I say, some of it is quite, compared to what most of us are brought up believing. We've all got a set of beliefs about the world. Some of them serve us and some of them don't. Belief systems, BS. Some of them are BS. Some of them are outdated. A classic example is, I imagine I'm on fairly safe ground to say that for all the people listening now, don't talk to strangers would not be a useful belief to have. Although when you were 3 or 4 or 5, it probably would have been. Do you see what I mean? We can outgrow them. Sometimes beliefs need, or ideas or maps of the world, our neurology just needs remodeling a little bit just to bring ourselves up to date. Otherwise, we held ourselves back unnecessarily. And why would we want to do that? Why would we want to live anything than the best and happiest life we can? Anyway, so let's just go back over these principles. First of all, behind most behavior is a positive intention. Now, when I learned this, I was told behind all behavior, but it just causes so many disputes because people immediately go, yeah, what about, and then name something awful going on in the world. Perhaps that person that did something awful did have a positive intention. They must have been doing it for a reason. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. They must have been trying to achieve some outcome, and people don't generally do things to try and achieve a negative outcome. I'm not saying they're not misguided. I'm not saying they're not in the wrong. But perhaps behind it was a positive intention. And just because some people do bad things or things that we would consider bad, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Don't say, well, that tyrant did that. Vladimir Putin's doing that. Where's the positive intention there? Because it kind of wastes the whole principle. Because if you can say that, most people, let's face it, are not tyrants, and hopefully you don't know any, hopefully not your boss or people you live with, don't waste the whole principle on just because that person over there is doing something that you don't agree with. If you saw the world, that most people were doing their best and did have positive intentions. It might soften your perhaps sometimes black or white view of the world, and you don't want to be black or white when you're doing stuff like this. The map is not the territory. That means the stuff we've grown up believing, the way we see the world, is not the world itself. All right? Not the world itself. A tube map is really useful when you're on the tube, but if you go up to the streets of Oxford Street, a tube map is useless. Again, it would need updating. It's not wrong as such. A tube map isn't wrong. Yeah, it's accurate where all the tube stations are. There's just more to it. The territory is much bigger, and the goal of NLP is to expand your map and give you more choices. So I'll bring in this one, number 7 now. Choice is better than no choice. Yeah, choice is better than no choice. Number 3, anything could be accomplished when broken down into small enough chunks. We've all heard the joke, how do you eat an elephant? That's where that comes from. There's no failure, only feedback. Isn't that a nice thought, that you've never failed, that you can't really get it wrong? Because you've always got another choice. You can always choose again. And perhaps you're not seeing it exactly as it is. And obviously you had a positive intention when you were doing that, and really you've just received feedback. And the other good news is people have all the resources that they need. Do you see how they all kind of weave into one another and become one kind of integrated whole? Which leads us on to our next one, which is this. Press the wrong one, sorry. Mind and body are one integrated system. Body-mind, a mind-body. It's not body and mind. We've kind of separated things. I think in old school thinking, you go to a priest for your spirit, a doctor for your body, and a shrink for your mind. I'm saying they're all one thing. It's all integrated. We talk about people being integrated. Surely that would be all the parts of us working harmoniously together. Okay. And this is interesting. Memory and imagination have the same neurological circuits. In other words, if you imagine you're playing the piano, the same neurons will fire in your brain, fascinatingly, as if you were actually doing it. This is why sports people use creative visualization. They will visualize themselves, succeeding over and over and over and over again. And the same neurons light up. Neurons that fire together, wire together, and before you know it, you've got a neural pathway, so they can then access that resourceful state that they need to be in this case on the sports field, just at a whim because of all the practice. They don't have to do it for real to experience it. They can rehearse it over and over and over again. Virtual reality is used to train people. Virtual reality is used to heal people. Another way of putting it is the mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. And you might think, yeah, right. But if you imagine biting into a lemon, getting a lemon, I did this the other day, and cutting it in half and squeezing the juice out and then biting into it, your mouth will pucker, I bet you. And that's just imagination. That's just done with ideas and thoughts alone. So there's a part of us, part of our mind-body system that doesn't know the difference, and we can use that to our advantage, very much to our advantage. Why do we get scared when we're watching a horror film? Well, part of us knows it isn't real. If you're watching a film with a saucy scene in it, shall we say, you might start to feel a bit saucy yourself. Obviously not me, because you can see my halo. But there's no real human beings in the room apart from the one watching it. Do you see what I mean? So that's that principle. And just put it into practical use. You were and are a human being doing your best with the knowledge and resources and the map of the world that you have. Cut yourself a break already. Stop being so hard on yourself. Self-acceptance and compassion are the key of this, and judgment doesn't feature. Okay. One of the principles that I'll come on to at a later date is people are not their behaviors. There's a lot more to someone than their behavior. A behavior is just a response to a situation. It's a tiny snapshot of someone's life. Okay. If people are like that all the time, then they've got a pretty overgeneralized behavior that might not be serving them. I'm not saying you have to hang around with people that are displaying negative behaviors. Not at all. It's your prerogative to put boundaries in. But ultimately, they're probably doing their best with some positive intention in there somewhere. Doesn't mean you have to have anything to do with them. For you, this is all about you. You were and are a human being doing your best with the knowledge and resources and the map of the world that you have. Cut yourself a break already. Number 2, you don't respond to reality. You react, re-act. In other words, act the same way that you did before. React, act again in the same way, and respond to your map of reality. The goal of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, good if I could say it because I'm teaching it, wouldn't it, is to broaden your map and therefore choice, or the ability to respond, which you could write as response ability. Isn't it nice to know that you have choice? You always have choice. You always have the ability to respond. Response ability, rather than I don't know what to do, I'll just act in the same old way before. We see people that are stuck in their ways, and people like that I would sum up with, when all you got is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Better strategy is needed. You're not wrong. There's no judgment or labels. It means you haven't succeeded, whatever that is, yet. You've received feedback, change the strategy, change the result. All right. You're not a failure. You're receiving feedback, and you have all the resources that you need. You are enough. You always were, which is good to know, or good to be reminded or reminded of, if you like. Let's pop some comments on. Here we go. Elizabeth Green says, hey. Julie Voice says, hey. Can you give up people making bad jokes, or I'm a total lost cause? Yeah, that's the only thing NLP can't help with, I'm afraid, mate. I'm afraid you're stuck with it. I can't help you with that at all. And Graham, that's kind of what we love about you, man. The show wouldn't be complete without you making at least one crap joke, and I'll follow it up with another one. And hey, we're a double act. Long and pack. What do you think? When my wife failed to make me dinner for a week, I gave her feedback on the situation. For some reason, she was not impressed. Oh, you jest. But the point is, and this is the thing with this, you can't use this to influence other people, or you shouldn't try, because things like that backfire on you. This is about, it's between you and you. This is about what you want to put out to the world, what you want to change, what you want to do. It's not about making other people do your bidding. There's more than enough of that going on. Ooh, lemon entry, my dear Watson. That's the punchline of a really rude joke that I'm willing to tell online. I know the joke, Graham. I know the joke. No, we lost cause. Anybody want to give up chocolate then? Anybody want to give something up? Or we could do a bit of NLP live. What do you think? Stick it in the comments if you do. Otherwise, I shall start to bring my guest on. Asa Don Brown, you're a very kind man, Graham. I've genuinely enjoyed your sense of humour and comments. Well, I'm glad someone has, Asa Don Brown. So over the next few days, we're having a segment. It's all going to be made into podcast as well, this NLP stuff. So you can listen again on demand. But as I say, you don't have to memorize all these principles that I'm doing. But if you'd like to experience it, either direct message me or we could do it with your permission online. We'd have to go sort of into deep, dark secrets. It could be as simple as something as wanting to give up chocolate, or wanting to be a little bit more of something, or a bit less of something, or a bit less anxious, or something like that, or even more confident. Because every behavior has a structure. Everything is done in some way by some configuration of our mind and body. Everything. Okay, it's not the outer world doing it. We are doing it. It's not that the world happens to us. We are happening right now in the present moment to the world. Okay, so changing your responses and changing, or shall we put it in NLP language, increasing your response ability is the key. So we do some more. It's all going to be podcasted as part of the Sound Mind Radio group, and I will be teaching you some practical applications of it, which you can actually take away and use. Feeling calm on demand is quite a nice one. Would you like me to do that one now? Feeling calm on demand. Would anyone like that? Just pop a yes in the chat window if you would, because I can teach you that right now. We could do that live, and we can all do it together if you like. Calm on demand. Do you fancy that? Anyone? Come on, this is free therapy. Thanks, Asa. Appreciate that, says Graham. Go for it, says Asa Don Brown. All right. So Julie Voice says, yes, I thought you might like this one. Okay. Stare at my T-shirt. No. What I want you to do is just obviously watch me on the screen, and just watch me and just pay attention to, God, I've never had so much attention. I'm feeling the love. What I want you to do is just remember a time in your memory when you were calm, when you were really, really calm. Let's go back to a memory, just somewhere along your personal timeline when you were really, really calm and you felt life was really good and really flowing and really working for you. You're happy in the moment, looking forward to the future, all things really, really good. If you like, perhaps you before life happened to you. if you like. But remember, you're happening to life. We're going to put you at cause rather than being at effect. And that's really powerful. That's a really powerful shift. So just imagine you're in that calm situation and see what you saw there. Okay. And if in the picture in the mind, in the theater of your mind, you're kind of watching it from a distance, like you're watching yourself from a distance, there's like two of you. I want you to step into your body and see it through your own eyes. So as if you're there again now, see what you saw. You can shut your eyes if you like. See what you saw. And imagine you've got a little brightness control and turn the picture brightness right up. And if anything's distant in the picture and things in the distance help you feel calm, bring them closer. Bring them closer to you. Bring them closer to you and turn the brightness right up. All right. Hear what you heard there. Hear the sounds in crystal clear sound. I won't say Dolby, but that sounds so old. But crystal digital sound. And notice if you feel any feelings in your body. And if you do, notice which way they're moving. Feelings tend to move. Sometimes they're like the gloopy lava lamps. Sometimes they spin. If they're spinning and the calm feeling spins, spin it faster. Make the arc of the circle bigger. Make it bigger, make it bolder, make it brighter. Make the sound sharper. Bigger, bolder, brighter, sharper. Bigger, bolder, brighter, sharper. And as you feel the peak of that feeling, squeeze your thumb and forefinger together and just associate that calm feeling with the pressure between your thumb and forefinger. Do that now, please. That's right. Bigger, bolder, brighter, faster. Right. Stop for a moment. I'm just going to do something to distract you because this is part of the... Take myself off for a second, just to bring you back to the moment. Now do it again. Squeeze your thumb and forefinger together, and you should be able to bring back that feeling of calm, because that's how calm is done. That's the strategy. That's the how of calm. There you go. And go back and watch that again and do it again if you missed any of that. And that's what they call a calm anchor. So you could use that if you're going to a situation that would normally stress you a bit. Before you go into the situation, bigger, bolder, sharper, faster. And then go into the situation in that way, and then you will respond differently. Do you see what I mean now? Rather than responsibility being a heavy word, you're responsible. It's more like you have the ability to respond. You're being a cause rather than being at effect. In other words, you're not a victim, and that's a lovely place to be. So there we go. There's your first bit of NLP, and we will be doing more. But I want to bring on my guest now, and I'm really excited to have this guy on because the last time I saw him was in Edinburgh, and we've done a couple of comedy gigs together, including some stuff online. He's got a laundry list of what he does. I put up comedian, thought I better check on LinkedIn, and oh my God, this guy has done so many things, which will become very obvious in a minute. So let's bring him on and welcome Colin Etches, ladies and gentlemen. Hello.
Hello, Neil. How are you?
All right. Colin Etches, comedian, musician, writer, broadcaster, sales specialist, and event planner. Do you ever sleep, dude?
All it means is I've failed at a lot of stuff, Neil.
Oh, come on. That's a very humble way of putting it.
You know what they say about master jack of all... I'm all right, man. But you know what they say about jack of all trades, master of none.
Well, I thought you mastered comedy pretty well when I saw your 1 hour show, Attention Deficit, in Edinburgh.
I have my moments, Neil, you know, but yeah, it was hard work though. Oh God, a month.
Yes, because you did how many shows did you do while you were up there at the Fringe?
92, Neil.
Good God.
Which incidentally is the same amount of football clubs in the Premier League, and thus suits my autistic need for number symmetry.
Loving it already. Loving it already.
Well, genuinely, Neil, I turned down 93 and 94. I said, I can't. I need to leave it at 92. It's good. It suits me now. You know what I mean?
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. But it leads us nicely onto what we're going to talk about, which is neurodiversity or neurodivergence, isn't it? Because I've heard the term. I mean, I did see your show. It's called Attention Deficit, and you talk what I noticed about yourself and some other great comedians as well. with their, because we did spots up there, didn't we? Like 10-minute spots in each other's, variety,
Yeah.
many on the shows, but other comedians, I didn't, but you did. You had your own hour show, and you talked about it become a lot more personal, I felt, with the hour-long shows. They put a lot more of themselves into it, and in a funny and entertaining way, but really told your life story, your backstory, and all that sort of thing. And it really does. And I remember saying to you after the show, I said, you've got to come on Men's Radio and talk about this, and talk about mental health and your thoughts and all that sort of stuff. So, this isn't the BBC, and I'm not Jeremy Paxman. Anything you don't want to say or don't want to answer, by all means don't. But anything you do, please do. So, what is it? I hear the term a lot, but what is it?
Well, the way it was explained to me, Neil, when I was trying to get my head around my diagnosis, was if you imagine that your brain's an electric wired circuit, right? And if you think about a wiring circuit, the wires have all got little nice plastic covers on them, haven't they, to stop them touching and shorting? Well,
I would hope so,
if you think of somebody. Yeah, well, if you think of somebody that's neurodiverse, a lot of our wires aren't covered. So it's almost like our brains are constantly shorting out.
Does that mean? Go on, after you.
No, go on, you first. It's complicated, so let's do it a bit at a time.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there already. So does that mean you can access more of yourself, or access things that other people can't? And is that sometimes a good thing, or is it always a bad thing, or what?
I think what it invariably means is that, so for me, right, part of my dyspraxia means I don't really have muscle memory. So when I do something physical, it feels quite a lot like the first time I do it.
Right.
Every time. So it doesn't, so there's no kind of, so it's like the brain just forgets stuff. So you can do something 10 times and on the 11th time not know how to do it. It's just like these wires are constantly touching and shorting, and things that normal folk take for granted, I really find difficult, and for no real explanation or reason why. We know so little biologically about how this stuff works.
So they've given you a diagnosis. Was that an easy process to go through?
Not as an adult, it wasn't. No, I was diagnosed in my 30s, so. For 30 odd years, I just thought I was a bit of a spanner, if I'm honest, Neil. And I'd been chucked in through mental health services. So, they don't treat neurodiversity separate to mental health. They treat it alongside, which means that it's not really a safe space for either patient.
Yeah, you were saying this before we came on air. Can you expand on that a little bit more? Because I thought that was a really good point.
Well, because as an adult you can't really. It's very difficult to be diagnosed as an adult, as people know. A lot of my friends that have been diagnosed as adults have had to go private for those diagnoses. But for 20 odd years, I was misdiagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Depression, and therefore I was treated as though I was mentally ill for so many years.
This is the danger, isn't it? Just giving someone a label when they already probably don't feel very good about themselves, and saying, oh, well, you're just depressed, or even worse, you've got borderline personality. In other words, saying there's something wrong with you, rather than just saying this is a condition that we need to learn to manage. And it might sound a similar thing, but it's not, is it? That the health system is very clunky at best on this, isn't it?
It is, and I feel like when the doctors banned out this term borderline personality disorder, really it just means I'm done thinking. Do you know what I mean? It feels like a kind of one-size-fits-all diagnosis for all the people with mental health conditions that they can't really fathom. Or, you know what I mean? Yeah. They just banned out this borderline personality disorder, and in my mind, the doctor's just telling us he's finished thinking at that point. He's because mental health is such a big issue at the moment that, is it 1 in 3 now, Neil, or maybe even 1 in 2 that will be affected by a mental health condition? And there are a variety of reasons why it happens, largely the way we live. contributes largely to most of the mental health conditions. It's probably a bit deep for an afternoon show.
No, not at all. We can go as deep as you want to go. I think certainly lifestyle does have a lot to do with it. And I suppose if there is a good side to the clunky mental health conditions, if I can frame it this way, and I don't wish to sound crass at all, but it's kind of forced your hand that you've had to learn strategies to deal with it. Almost pioneering the field, starting with yourself, kind of thing. What do you do?
As a man, right? Like men, women, girls that have neurodiversities tend to be much better at masking, and tend to be much better at being able to fit in for a small period of time, enough to kind of get by. But I think men find it more difficult. I think boys find it much more difficult to hide the way they're feeling and kind of just fit in. And it's not a battle of the sexes thing. There's scientific studies out there that show that women are significantly better at masking. But I left home at 14, Neil. So I had to learn to mask. I had no choice, because otherwise I would have said the wrong thing to the wrong person and I'd have got murdered. I would have made an error that got me in more trouble than I was capable of dealing with as a 14-year-old on your own in the world.
As your 14-year-old self, what kind of support would you have needed then? Just thinking, if there's 14-year-olds now, what kind of support would they need? A young person, just probably, going through the I won't use the word trauma, but rough seas of puberty, because that's a hormonal time at the best of times. Yeah. But with this thrown in, what kind of support would have worked for you to keep you not on the straight and narrow, but to keep you happy and balanced, shall we say, or as possible?
I think, to be honest, the things were there. I mean, I was taken from my parents' accommodation and put into social services accommodation when I was, but it just wasn't for me, and I was never there. And to be honest, right, I met a couple of guys that were a couple of years older than me, and only a couple of years older than me. And like me, they left home a bit early and they looked after me. People is what kept me alive through those years. It wasn't mental health services, because remember, I couldn't claim benefits. I couldn't access anything because as a 14, 15-year-old, I've slipped through the net. So it was largely the benevolence of people and a couple of good youth workers.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that just happened to pick me up, sort of, through the process.
Yeah, we find these little unexpected angels along the way sometimes, don't we? And how did you get into comedy? Tell us how long you've been doing it.
I've only been doing stand-up since I started doing stand-up during the lockdown, so it was all online, online stand-up. But I've been performing since April 2020. When was it we got out of lockdown? 21.
Yeah.
So just over 2 years.
I remember it was funny in Edinburgh because we were standing in that bar and we sort of looked at each other and we both went, "I know you." And you identified me by my material. I said, I sing about doing unspeakable things with Hoovers, and he went, "It's you!" And he very kindly gave me my 2 spots in Edinburgh, which is I'm very, very grateful for, because I went up there totally, without any spots to see what I could play when I was up there. So,
I mean, look, having seen you perform, it's quite apt that you do an awareness show on men's mental health, because there is a fine line. There is a fine line between comedy and having a nervous breakdown, Neil. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, pretty much. And if you've seen my set, that line is pretty blurred, I would say. It's pretty blurred. How long did it take you to write your show? Because I can imagine an hour show is no small task, is it?
I mean, an hour? No, it's not. And in 2 years, it's quite impressive. I mean, if I just blow my own trumpet for a second, do you know what I mean? I mean, taking an hour show to Edinburgh is not a 2-year thing, and I think it ties into my neurology, because as somebody that's autistic, when we're kids nowadays and they're autistic, we find their obsession and we fire them into it with both hands. Do you know what I mean? Just go and be obsessive about that, you know. But for me, it wasn't like that. They took away all the good things I wanted to do at school as a kind of carrot and stick type way of dealing with me. So I only found my obsession, which is comedy, 2 years ago. You know, so I finally found the thing. So the positive aspect of my super focus at the detriment of everything else in my life is that I've managed to write an Edinburgh show in sort of 2 years.
The thing is, though, I mean, I've got a friend who I won't name him and I won't name the condition because that isn't fair. But one of the things in it, he is able to focus brilliantly, and I would say almost obsessively on one thing at a time, and that is a superpower nowadays in this distracted world. This ability to focus is quite a superpower. So I'm not surprised you could write the show in that short period of time. How do you manage?
Go on.
No, after you. You were going to say.
Well, I've still had to do the hard work. I've still had to run it round the clubs, and you know, because unlike most artists, Neil, as you know, we take our work out when it's not really finished. You know what I mean? We take our work out while we're still, because the only way we can write our material and make it better is to play it to more people.
Yeah, open mic nights. So, the trying out new material nights. I've got one of those this Sunday.
Preview shows. Do you know what I mean? Like I did 7 preview shows before Edinburgh. Do you know what I mean? All largely at my own expense. You know, just to kind of get it ready for the folk. But you have to be obsessive. I think to get a show ready for Edinburgh, you have to be a little bit obsessive.
Yes.
So
yes,
I think
indeed.
it's been an advantage here.
So how do you care for yourself? Self-care. How do you, what's the word I want? I want to say take responsibility for yourself, but that's the wrong word because it implies that you're not. I'm not quite sure what word I'm looking for. How do you care? How do you own yourself, present yourself, and so that you feel your best every day? That's the best way of putting it.
Like most men, not very well. Do you know what I mean? Like you know what they say about behind every great man there's a greater woman. There's probably quite a lot of truth in that. You know what I mean? Sure, like my partner is incredibly supportive. You know what I mean? She's
yeah, she's a lovely lady. Yeah, I met her in Edinburgh too.
Yeah, you know. But how do I look after? I try my best. Do you know what I mean? I try. You know, there's things that I have to do, like other neurodiverse people will know that we're very slow to get started in the morning. Right. So like I need a couple of hours before I leave the house. I need to.
So what's a typical day? Run us through a typical day in the day of a neurodivergent person. Good thing to do. So start a couple of hours to get going, first of all.
Well, I'll get up and I'll have a cup of tea and I'll potter around. And what happens is, for me anyway, because we're all different, that's the problem with neurodiversity is we're all very different. Is that my brain wakes up, my body wakes up before my brain. So for the first sort of 25 minutes of me being awake, I'm waiting for my brain to catch up.
Right.
So, you know, then I'm pottering about for a couple of hours to try and get myself ready to start the day.
Yes.
And if it's a good day, it'll happen. And I'll be sat at the computer by 11 o'clock doing something.
Yeah.
You know, but I've still had to get up at 7:30 for that. You know what I mean? I've had to, you know, so everything's just slower. And therefore, my day by tea time, I'm pretty tired.
I was going to ask, like an iron, do you heat up slowly but cool down slowly, or is there a sudden energy drop when you've had enough?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how it goes, and I can get more time out with it because I'm prescribed Ritalin for my ADHD, and I can kind of get a bit more out of it with that. And it means if I've got a gig in a night time, I might not be able to do anything in the day. because if I've got a gig like I did the other week last week in North Wales, right? I've got a 3-hour drive. I've got to get to the gig. I've got to do the gig. I've got to get back. So the biggest struggle I have on a day-to-day basis is managing my energy levels, because I've got friends that do 15 hours a day, but I just couldn't do that. I think the best I've got is 7.
I've tried doing the 15-hour days and it didn't work, and eventually I burnt out, and burnout is not fun. So I don't recommend the nose to the grindstone philosophy. It's almost like your hand's been forced to take care of yourself, which I suppose that's not a bad thing, I guess. Got some comments coming in. Can I put some comments on the screen? Graham Pack, comics are a strange breed. Yes, there was always the jokes before I knew anything about mental health that all comics are depressed. I remember that joke being around for decades. I know that my nephew is one in LA. Oh, is there a higher, good question, proportion of comics that have issues such as ADHD, autism? I do notice an awful lot of it on the circuit. A lot of people are talking about their autism, their disability, that kind of thing, and they've all built whole shows around it. And some of them do it very well. Stephen Catling springs to mind. He's very funny.
We all express our neurodiversities in very different ways. So for Stephen, it's very much in his performance. You know what I mean? You see that he expresses it in the way he performs and the material that he does. I'm not going to ruin it for everybody. Just check him out on YouTube, because he is a funny guy.
It's utterly surreal, visual, crazy, off the wall, bonkers, surreal. He's a great guy. I've really warmed to his act, actually.
Well, I think disproportionately, comedy does lend itself to people that are neurodiverse for a number of reasons. The first one being we think too much. We think way too much. So we think about stuff that perhaps, folk that aren't neurodiverse miss. But I don't understand why there are proportionately more neurodiverse people, because I hate bright lights, loud sounds, and large groups of people.
Right.
Yet I'm a comedian.
Yeah, you kind of get all three, don't you?
Yeah, which kind of places me at the mercy of 3 of the things that I hate the most. I think for me, I feel obligated, because I've got ADHD, dyspraxia, and autism, as well as PDA and a couple of other things. And largely, people with my
what is
PDA, it's called pathological demand avoidance. It's essentially, if I'm asked to do something, I have an immediate involuntary response that is no, even if I'm doing it. So I could be walking to the cat. You say to me, put the kettle on, make a cup of tea. I'll go, no, Neil, bugger off. And then I go and as I'm going to put the kettle on.
Wow.
It's like a form of Tourette's, I believe. Do you know what I mean? It's like just an involuntary, like you've asked me to do something, and my automated response is no, I'm not doing it. And as I said, even if I'm walking to the kettle.
Goodness me, that's fascinating.
It's madness. Can I tell you a funny story, actually, mentioning Tourette's, Neil? I had a lady.
What a funny story.
I had a lady in the audience at Edinburgh that had Tourette's. And as comedians, we worry about what people that come in our audience, and and I've never had anybody in the audience with Tourette's, right? And every time I told a joke that it was either sad or dark, she either went, yay, or woo. Every single time. It was magnificent, Neil. I couldn't have wrote it into the show any better. It was just,
and it's one of my every show, don't you? She could be your regular audience member. Sign her up on a retainer.
Oh, completely, man, completely. But I mean, going back to the question, there are disproportionately more comedians that have got neurodiversities. Either that, or I'm wrong, and it's just that we're talking about it more now, so we're just aware. I mean, it's possible that the numbers.
I do see a lot of it on the comedy circuit. In some ways, are there aspects of it that gives you superpowers that other people who are not neurodivergent don't have? Focus might be one that I would move.
I don't feel like it's that for me. I think for me, it's my particular skill set. So I know a lot of people that have got as complex a diagnosis as I have, and they don't have the ability to communicate it. I think my skill set has given me the ability to communicate from inside the fog almost.
Massively, and it's a conversation that we need to have, because I mean, I remember I was intrigued when I was watching your show, and it really gave me an insight into it. So you're absolutely right to say you have the skill set to communicate it, because I wouldn't have. You used the phrase earlier. I take it for granted, you know, and I would never have imagined that people could see the world through this map, through this lens. But it's fascinating. It just shows how different and diverse we all are, and for that reason,
well,
you know,
the objective of the show, Neil, is to provide. It's twofold. It's to provide insight to those that live around it, and to kind of demonstrate how the neurodiverse mind works, to promote a little bit more understanding. But for the neurodiverse audience, people that come to my show, there's a therapeutic element. We just need to laugh. The stuff that makes us the most sad and is hardest in our lives is actually the stuff that's the funniest.
And that leads us on very nicely to this comment, because there was a lady actually in your show, wasn't there, that was neurodiverse. And I remember she left a review, and she said in the review, it really helped me, because I think sometimes, like I've said this loads of times on this platform, that if there's anything mental health related, almost a symptom, a common symptom, even though it's all very different, a common thing is that we think we're the only one. We feel very alone. You know, the only one experiencing it, and that is so not true. So just for that lady, she would have felt such relief and validation, I suppose, just from being on your audience, and that's a wonderful thing. Comedy is a therapeutic tool, says Dave Sleet. The phrase "laughter is the best medicine" is very apt for many people, certainly, Dave. And he also says, we were talking about masking earlier, female masking is a major issue in diagnosis. Yeah,
it is completely, as we're finding out with my 14-year-old daughter now, that she's completely masked it from both me and her mum. And it's come into prevalence now. She's hitting GCSEs. But it's comedy therapy. It shouldn't be for the comedian. I think, for me personally, we all know comedians, Neil, that we've seen, and they are just quite clearly therapizing themselves on stage. Do you know what I mean? And they don't really care about the audience. They don't care about the audience, Neil. It's just them telling a load of jokes to get a load of stuff off their chest.
Yeah, so, I don't agree with that. I mean, I have seen people use it as a therapeutic tool in a good way, where they do care about the audience, and they credit it for being a major part in their healing. I've seen some of that as well, but the kind that you described as well.
But I didn't realise, Neil, that my show would have quite the therapeutic input that it has. And you don't know this, but this happened to me. It was during the last week of Edinburgh. I'd done a preview show in Birmingham, and in the audience there'd been a whole family. And I don't mind doing my show for sort of 13s and above, as long as the parents are okay with the fact I F and Jeff a bit. I'm happy. I'd rather that teenagers saw my show and got something from it.
Yeah.
And there was a whole family in the front row, and the eldest child was very autistic, and she'd been having a really hard time. And what her dad had thought is, let's take her to see this neurodiverse comedian and show her that just because she struggles with stuff, it doesn't need to hold her back, right? So they came to the show. We had a lovely chat afterwards. I had a chat with the young girl in question, and we told her to just be herself. That's all we can do, just be ourselves. Otherwise we'll spend our lives trying to fit and bend into everything else.
Yeah, we got a message. A lady last week on the show, actually. She's a reformed people pleaser, Helen Snape. Yeah, very much so. It's about self-esteem you're looking for, and acceptance, not other acceptance and other esteem.
Yeah, well, isn't it? During the last week of Edinburgh, her dad emailed me because I'd given him my email address, and he said, I just thought you'd like to know, after that she went away from your show and it changed her perspective, and she got 7 GCSEs. Not bad for a girl that was hell-bent on killing herself 4 months ago. You know, now I'm not saying that my show was responsible for all that, but if what I'm doing has the capacity and the power to give a young girl a bit of inspiration that struggled, and then she sees a confident looking, you know, relatively young comedian that's got her issues and some. And I think, you know, I'm not saying I'm responsible for all the change, but there was definitely a hand
You're
in.
certainly a big part of it. Certainly, I think you're being a bit overly humble there, my friend. I think you're responsible for a lot of it, and I think that's great. And I think the greatest gift you gave her was, as I said, she felt so alone, and then suddenly, oh, I'm not the only one. There's more like me, and that sense of relief that people can feel when they feel they're not the only one, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're not broken. They're just who they are. That's a massive step, isn't it? A massive.
And I doesn't think it doesn't, you know, I mean, what I'm looking for now, Neil, if I'm honest, and I don't know if it's down any of your listeners' alleyway, what I'm looking for at the moment is a fundraiser, because what I want to do is I want to take this show around adult education centres, and I want to play the show to professionals. I want to play the show to people with the condition. I want to play the show to families of. Do you know what I mean? I really want to take this around the country now, and it's becoming less about comedy and more about comedy with a campaign attached, you know.
Well, certainly if anyone's listening and they have any contacts, do absolutely feel free. I know we've got Asa Don Brown listening, who's very senior in the psychiatric world in America and Canada. If anything, Asa Don Brown interested, I can certainly hook you up. I also know a chap called Mark Jarrett that runs, and I'm not kidding, something like 250 WhatsApp groups. It's incredible. A self-confessed networking whore, his words. And
wow,
he's
impressive.
So I'll hook you up with him as well, definitely.
Yeah.
Another comment here from the Reverend Insanity, Fang Wan, I think. Hello from India. Love to Men's Radio Station. Please keep working for the betterment of the forsaken and forgotten gender. Goodness me. Big words. So you got another show for Edinburgh next year, or is it going to be same one or different one? Or
I'm bringing this show back next year. The Attention Deficit I'm taking back. It's booked into some festivals this year. It's booked into Faversham in Kent on the 6th of October. That's at the Guildhall, I think.
Yeah.
I'm doing it at Nottingham Comedy Festival in November. Hometown gig. I'm bringing it. My mum's going to be there, Neil, and everything.
Oh, super.
So I'm a little bit nervous about that. I've never performed for my mum. So that could be a lot. And then I'm just working it hard, really, through Brighton and Glasgow and a few comedy festivals next year. The plan is very much.
When's your next stand-up gig?
My next stand-up gig is the 6th of October. I'm taking a couple of weeks off now because I'm a bit tired, if I'm honest, Neil, after Edinburgh and stuff. It's the 6th, and that's in Faversham. That's at Faversham Comedy Festival. Oh, Faversham Fringe, not Comedy Festival, is it? It's Faversham Fringe.
Okay.
And that's a full hour of me talking about being a neurodiverse granddad and stuff.
Where are you findable online? Do you have a website I can put on the screen for people?
You can find me on all socials at Comic Colin 78. Well, all socials.
Comic Colin.
Comic Colin 78. Yeah, Comic Colin 78, and yeah, you can find me on the ones I bother with.
Right.
I should do more. I'm awful. I should get a social media expert to help me, but I'm a bit tight, so I don't want to.
No, I'm absolutely terrible at social media. Well, look, thank you so much, Colin Etches, for being on. Thank you for the spots in Edinburgh. I know our paths will continue to interact in the future in one way or another. But thanks for being on. I'm glad we've done this. And I know you want to chat about a podcast, to get your message out there more. Yeah, we're certainly chatting about a podcast. We'll have a chat off air about that. And
yes, mate, no worries.
Get that out there for you, definitely, because I definitely think it's a message that the world needs to hear. If anything, for that wonderful thing you did for that girl, just so she could accept herself as she was, and all that relief of having to be a particular way for the world gone. Just be yourself.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's an awesome responsibility, Neil. It's not one I wanted. but as I have it, I think I need to do something with it, don't I?
Yeah, for
Almost,
sure. And you certainly are. Brilliant show once again. Really enjoyed coming to see it, and our paths will cross again very soon. Thank you so much for being on MRS, my friend.
No worries, Neil. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye.
Speak to you soon, and I'll chat to you a bit later about the podcast. I'll get in touch off air.
Yes, mate. No worries. Thanks a lot.
See ya. Another great guest. I'm sure you will agree, ladies and gentlemen. So if you know anyone that would benefit from that kind of thing, but what an incredible story! What an incredible story! Just, and I've said that in one form or another for so many times on this show. Because when my mental health was down a couple of years ago, I literally felt I was the only one. And it feels so isolating, and then suddenly to realise that I'm not the only one is a wonderful relief, first of all. And the only trap there is to get sort of trapped in a kind of pity party. But what Colin's done and the ultimate way out is when you turn the healing corner and then you start to put your experiences out there for the benefit of other people, leaving breadcrumbs for people to follow. And it's great also that he's really managing his own mental health and not relying on the systems which are strained at the moment, to put it very mildly, aren't they? Thanks for tuning in today. We've got 4 minutes left. Any last minute comments? Any shout outs? Anything you'd like me to do? Do a little tap dance, tell a couple of jokes. Phil Dave's going to be here on Friday with the lovely Chantal, with all the TV and stage news, what's on. I always look forward to that spot, actually. It's really good. And then Russ Boy is back on Monday, and we're back to normal from Monday. Any last minute comments, though, before we go? All right, then. Then I shall run through the NLP principle. Oh, yes, we do. Ken Evans, can you do a health tip? A health tip on what? Health's a big word, Ken. Health tip on what? What kind of health are we looking at? Mental health, physical health? I think I've got my Michael Mosley book in. On mental health. Okay, anything a little more specific? Colin says, thanks for listening. Oh, it was really good to listen to, Colin. Thank you. I think we can take the lesson from today is just to accept yourself as you are, even if there's things about you that you want to change, even if there's things that you're not happy with. We've all got some things that we're not happy with that we'd like, oh, I wish I wasn't like that. But it's in psychology, they've come across this before. I'll pop it on the screen, actually, because it's an important one. So just bear with me because I'm talking and typing at the same time. Typical man brain can only do one thing at a time. See, it would seem that the acceptance paradox, it would seem that, pushing against and resisting something is the way to get rid of it. But it kind of doesn't work. And if you can see it on the world stage, the war on drugs, that hasn't worked. We pushed against that. We fought that. That doesn't work. The war on teenage pregnancy, that was big when I was growing up. That didn't work. We need more elegant solutions. And the first solution to anything personal is to accept it. It's just to accept it. You don't have to like it, don't have to agree with it. Just accept it. And then when you're not fighting anymore, there's a certain relief in that. If you can make something rather than something that's riling you up, something just that's neutral, just the way it is, just what is at the moment, temporary, then it becomes an awful lot easier to change. Because you're not fighting your own fighting. You're putting a lot of energy into resisting and pushing against things and fighting things. If you just accept things as they are, and while you're at it, accept yourself as you are, then it's a lot easier to change, because you're coming from a state of neutrality. You haven't got all that kind of fighting energy to get past first. You've got that kind of neutral state. And in that neutrality and that acceptance, it becomes so much easier going with the flow, downstream, not fighting. It's the difference between putting your canoe in a river and paddling upstream than just putting the canoe and letting it carry you. And the river will carry you. Just accept the river is what it is. And it always moves. The river doesn't stand still. People think if I accept it, I'm going to be stuck with it forever, when actually the opposite is true. What you resist persists. So therefore, the more you fight something, the more it kind of clings to you. It's a bit like Brer Rabbit and the Tar Baby. And Brer Rabbit would push against the Tar Baby. And the more he pushed to try and get rid of the Tar Baby, the more Tar Baby would stick. But if he just sort of ignored it, the Tar Baby wouldn't have really had any bearing on his well-being. So there's a mental health tip for you. We've got 40 seconds left. I've got a private message coming in, so I'm just going to see what that is. The tips that you do at the start of the show, like tapping. I'll do tapping again on the next show. But if you want to learn about tapping, Google EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. There's loads of stuff online about it. EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. That's it. We're coming up 1 o'clock. That's it. Phil, Dave and co are going to be here on Friday. Russ is back on Monday. Have a brilliant Wednesday afternoon. I've been Neil Long, and thank you for tuning in to MRS. And thanks once again to our brilliant guest, Colin Etches. Good afternoon.